Hey guys, Zakk here from MixChecks.com. Welcome back to this live mixing session with only Logic stock plugins. So today we're going to be mixing the snare drum specifically, and we're only using what comes with Logic. So let's jump right in. Okay, jumping into one of my favorite instruments, which is the snare drum. So, if you watch the last kick video, it's going to be very similar. Still only stock plugin. It's going to be hard not to reach for some of these, Waves and Plugin Alliance plugins, honestly, but we can do it. Logic's been good to me, and now we're going to reward it by only using its stock plugins. So snare drum, let's see what we got going on here. All right. I'm honestly not sure how they were able to get that much separation. There's like there's no cymbal bleed at all unless it's gated already. And this is a somewhat mixed multi-track. Whatever. We'll go with it. So to me, the snare drum sounds kind of, I don't know, it's a little too sizzly. I want it to be more of a pop, gunshot kind of snare, which is why we added in some of these samples. But I still, whenever I'm augmenting with samples, I still like to make that original track sound as good as possible so that whenever I augment it with samples that you have, two good sounding sources to combine into one, not just a crappy one, and then you might as well just replace it if that's what you're going to do. Okay, so let's see what we can do about that sizzle. It's just too, I don't know. Hopefully you can hear what I'm talking about. It just bypass. You hear that like it just sounds kind of like a little toy snare drum. So, or it sounds like the bottom mic is really what it sounds like. Okay, so doing that high shelf kind of helps that. Let's give it some body. With the snare drum, usually the body is around 200, 150, somewhere in there. Let's boost this. Whoop. And remember, so on the kick drum, I told you that the 200, 250 was kind of that knocking frequency. And so on the snare drum, we actually do want that to knock and have that beef a little bit. Okay, so that sounds good to me right now. Now I'm going to compress it. Okay, and so now that I'm compressing it, the sizzle has kind of come back a little bit. So instead of going back to this EQ, which is feeding into the compressor, I'm just going to add another one. I mean, that's the cool thing about DAWs. You have unlimited whatever you want. There's no limitations like there is with hardware. Not that I don't like hardware, but you can literally do whatever you want. So I don't know if this is, as it is right now, I'm not sure if it would cut through the mix. But once we combine all of our snares with the samples and stuff, then that's when we can adjust some EQs to make them cut through a little bit better. And so that's in a good place. Let's move on to our our snample. It's actually a good name for a snare sample. Let's move on to our snample sounds. I'm going to send all of these to a bus. Bus 3. Snare. Snample. There we go. Snample. Okay. And then if you want to move the track, turn automation on. Turn it off. Okay. And then I actually want this to be in front of this one. Okay. And if we learned our lesson from the kick drum, it's that if we turn this on right now, it'd be very loud. So we're going to turn all these down and then fade them in and get a good blend going on. So let's set up a drum snare loop. I'm going to solo this. Oh man, that one sounds good. Oh, just hear the body that one had? Yeah, so this is definitely a good combination. I actually like this. Good job, Logic, or whoever made these samples for Logic. Dang, okay. So, now that we have that, let's just feather it in with our current snare drum. And then let's see the ratio or the balance between the kick and the snare. Actually, what we can do for this is the same thing we did, is make a snare master track. Okay, so let's unsolo all this stuff. So we have our snare master. Where'd it go? Okay, so, and like we did on the other ones, we can hide. Whoop. So all our kicks came back when we push H. So now we can hide these. Push H again. So now we just have a kick and snare track to adjust. So right now the snare is way louder than the kick, so let's start with the kick and then just feather in the snare drum to match it. And I think what I'm going to do on the snare master is, since I'm just sending those samples in there, I'm actually going to add another compressor to just kind of glue all those samples and real tracks together and just kind of soften it up a little bit. Cool. I'm liking that snare sound. And so now we can move on to in this particular track, it's the tom roll. So we're going to move on to that in the next video. I will see you then.